Hi everyone, my name's Mark. I'm going to be your pilot today. I'm very pleased to take the boys up and give them a few short lessons on how to fly a small aircraft. So we hope you enjoy this video. So before we even get to the airport or take off today, there's a few important things to look at. Firstly is the weather, looking at the clouds, looking at the winds and looking at visibility. It's a little bit cloudy today, a bit scattered cloud, but we make sure that we've got enough height and the base of the clouds allows us still to fly under them or around them. Now that we're at the airport, I need to sign in, so I sign in the passengers, do a passenger log of who's flying with me today. So here we are at the plane and what we call a visual inspection of the plane. So we basically walk around, we check the fuel. Now we're actually in the aircraft. You'll find that flying is a lot about checklists, some important things to check as we go through different stages of the flight. So next we start moving and we take the aircraft and steer the aircraft to an area called the run-up bay, where we do a number of important checks to make sure the plane and the engine is really ready for the takeoff. So now we've been given takeoff clearance, we apply full power, we start to move along the runway, we check that the engine instruments are still showing in the green ranges, and then we watch our airspeed rising, and when we get to 55 to 60 knots, we can pull back on the control column now and lift ourselves off the ground. So here we go, we're now flying. So here we are in some clear space, about 1,750 feet, heading up towards 2,000. We might have some fun now and do some steep turns. So what we do is we make sure it's a clear look out both sides of the aircraft, see any other aircraft traffic around. If not, here we go, 45-degree angle of bank, and let's have some fun in some steep turns. So Moorabbin Tower have given us clearance to enter into the controlled airspace, have acknowledged our radio call that we're inbound. Now comes the fun part. As you can see, we're turning to head on final for landing on runway 17 right. This is probably the hardest part of flying, is to line yourself up and get a descent path of the aircraft which puts you nicely down onto the center line and the start of the runway. So we got our clearance to land, we've landed safely and we've vacated the runway. We've contacted Moorabbin Ground and got further clearance to taxi ourselves back to the parking area, where we'll shut down the aircraft and switch off all the avionics. We'll securely tie down the aircraft, we'll check the fuel, we need to record how much fuel we've used, how much airtime we've used on the plane's odometer. And once all that's done, we can head back inside. So hope you've enjoyed this short video on learning to fly a small plane. Yeah, I've always wanted to fly a plane. I remember as a small kid, I would stand at my parents would take me down to watch the aircraft go and stand at the fences and watch them land. And in those days, you were allowed to walk onto the tarmac and have a look at the aircraft. And I do remember even as a boy actually buying a white shirt and getting some of the pilot epaulettes on my shoulder and wanting to do it. But it was pretty expensive at the time, and to save up the money to take flying lessons was a lot of commitment, and it took a long while before I got the ability to do that. So, but I've always wanted to fly, and actually, thanks to my wife who bought me a flying lesson for a Father's Day present a number of years ago, I actually got the opportunity to do it, and it's been really great ever since. Scary instances in a plane. Yeah, I think every pilot's had a few little a few scary instances. I've sort of thought I was lining up for one particular runway and then realised it was the other runway, so you have to do a quick turn. I mean, in those situations, you just have to admit to the tower that you've messed up your landing and you're going to go around. Sometimes when the wind's a little bit stronger, it can get quite bouncy and choppy. And when you're navigating and flying and radio communications and there's other aircraft in the area, it can be quite demanding. So I think many pilots have flown with a few sweaty palms trying to keep everything in control. And it really is that point of making sure you're doing your checklists, thinking ahead, looking ahead, keeping a constant lookout, and just not making silly errors which can obviously get you in trouble. So I think there's always an element of being scared. I think if you take it too lightly, then you're perhaps not being safe enough. So being a little bit scared, I think, is perhaps a good thing. Why do I love flying? Oh, there's definitely an adrenaline to sitting up at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet in a relatively small tin can. But it's great just to have that freedom. I always remember looking from Frankston to the city, seeing the sunset, seeing the beach. But there's also a technical and quite a demanding aspect to flying. So there's never a dull moment while you're in the air. One of the things I tell people is that there's no brakes on an aircraft. It's always go. So you have to always be thinking ahead. And that sort of adrenaline always comes. And then when you make a good landing, it's always nice to be back on the ground. So all around, it's such a really great experience. Yeah, I think every pilot would like to fly a bigger plane. The reality is, if you're a recreational pilot like me, then the ability and the cost and the time of flying a bigger plane, it gets very expensive. As you move up. It also gets more complicated. So the more complicated, the more things to remember, and quite frankly, the more things that can go wrong, particularly if you're a solo pilot. So keeping to smaller, simpler planes, I think, is a good thing for me. I've had some fun in some flight simulators. If I get to fly a Learjet at some point, that would be fantastic. But the reality is, for recreational flyers like I am, I think I'll be flying smaller planes for a long time to come.